Dark-haired guy run by, Chief. Dark-haired guy go in the water. Shark in the water.
Welcome to Random Movie Reviews. I'm Nathan, and today I'll be talking about Jaws. So I know this movie already celebrated its 50th anniversary last month, but as of recently, I've kind of made it a tradition to watch Jaws every 4th of July, or roughly around the same time as the 4th of July. So I was already planning on talking about this movie after I celebrated the 4th and was taking some time doing that stuff. But I will admit, Jaws is one of those movies that I'm always kind of hesitant to talk about on this channel. Not because I don't love it, and I know I say this a lot, but Jaws, you know, it really is one of my personal favorite movies, one of the movies that helped ignite my passion for filmmaking as an art form. But it's also one of those movies where it's like, well, what can I say or add to the conversation of Jaws that hasn't already been said? And it's basically just going to be me saying, this is a perfect movie. It's a movie that transformed cinema as we know it. It created the summer blockbuster. It was the first movie to gross $100 million. It's one of the early examples of a movie being heavily merchandised. And then, of course, when Star Wars came out, that took that to a whole other level. But it's like, basically, you can put a stamp in film history and be like, these are films before Jaws, and these are films after Jaws. Like, the movie's that significant. I will say, one of the things that I found kind of interesting while prepping for this video and doing some research is my primary method of looking at film reviews is through Letterboxd, which I always link in the description of my videos for anyone interested. I remember when I logged in my first review for Jaws on Letterboxd that I was like, it seems like the review score to this movie is a little lower than I would expect. And similar to that of IMDb, Letterboxd also has its top 250 movies based on, you know, movie reviews, and they average out the film scores, and that's how they determine which movies are the highest rated on that website. And I was looking through the top 250, and Jaws was not on that list.
What?
We are so serious, guys.
You're fucking high! Are you out of your mind?
And I was shocked, because movies like Everything Everywhere All at Once is on that list, which I don't really think belongs on there. That's just my personal take. Movies like Jaws or Raiders of the Lost Ark or The Exorcist, I mean, these movies are not being represented in his Letterboxd top 250 as some of the greatest, most important movies ever made, which is, I think, crazy. And it made me wonder, I'm like, is the younger generation or the up-and-coming generation of cinephiles, do they not really find those type of movies interesting anymore? Is Jaws one of those movies where, you know, it's been so heavily parodied and satirized, and the amount of Jaws ripoffs that have happened in the wake of Jaws' success, including all of the sequels, has that kind of made the movie to new viewers like less exciting than it was back when it came out in 1975? It made me wonder, and that's kind of like the angle of which I'm going to be talking about this movie today, is how like the legacy of the movie, I still think, and of course there are millions of Jaws fans out there like me who worship at the altar of Jaws and consider it to be an absolute perfect movie. But I do think there are, just based on some of the reviews I read on Letterboxd, and, you know, some people are like, it's a shark movie. I don't see what the big deal is. And it's like, well, you have to kind of contextualize these things in order to appreciate what makes Jaws so amazing. I mean, it's a movie that its premise is quite simple. You know, there's a small fictional town known as Amity Island, which was actually Martha's Vineyard, that is being terrorized by a shark. And there are three central characters, all of which have very personal and different reasons as to why they want to embark on this journey together to go and get rid of this shark from terrorizing their community. For Chief Brody, who's played by Roy Scheider, his reasons for going after the shark is obviously to protect his community because he is the chief of that community as well as his family, but he has to get over his phobia of going out on the open ocean in order to do that. Then there's the oceanographer Matt Hooper, played by Richard Dreyfuss, whose motivation to go after the shark is not only to aid Chief Brody, but also for more analytical reasons, to gain more knowledge about sharks, something he's very passionate about and is deeply interested in. And for Quint, played by Robert Shaw, his motivation as to why he's going after the shark is by far the most interesting in the movie, so I'm going to talk about that one a little bit later. So on paper, it's very, very simple, but it's the filmmaking, it's the performances, It's the writing. It's all the little happy accidents that happened during the making of this movie that elevate it to the masterpiece that it is. Recently, I just watched the Jaws at 50 anniversary documentary special that was made by National Geographic. It's available to stream on Disney Plus for anyone who may be interested. I've seen a lot of Jaws documentaries. This one's really, really good. And if anyone's interested in the art of filmmaking and film history, I highly recommend watching this movie. In fact, I literally just rewatched it before making this video. Watching that documentary really highlights what makes this movie so special, and it brings in all the context as to why Jaws was such a monumental moment in the history of cinema. And while the movie may be simple from a plot standpoint, or as far as like the broad premise of the movie, may be fairly straightforward. Like a lot of simple movies, there's a lot of subtext and there's a lot of ways you can read into the movie and look for little moments of depth. For example, the whole mayor of Amity, who's being an idiot, saying, no, we're not going to close down the beach. This is our most profitable time of the year. It's 4th of July weekend. People are going to come to the beach. We're not closing it down because of this shark attack. Clearly, that was a commentary on the Watergate scandal that was highlighting the public's distrust of the government and authority figures starting after Watergate in 1970s America. You know, the Vietnam War was getting wrapped up in the 70s as well, and, soldiers suffering from PTSD and trauma. I think a lot of that can be read into Quint's character. Quint, who has made it his life to capture sharks and kill sharks, and we don't know why for the longest time until we get to that iconic moment in the movie, which Spielberg says is his most proudest moment in Jaws. The scene where we find out what's Quint's motivation for hunting sharks, and we find out that he was aboard the USS Indianapolis, which is based on a true story, what is often considered to be the worst and most horrifying shark attack in history. Quint becomes obsessed with this, and he's unable to escape this trauma, and the way he deals with it is hunting sharks, and because he wasn't able to let go of the past, he ultimately gets killed by Jaws in one of the most epic and harrowing movie deaths ever, as far as I'm concerned. And there are just so many iconic scenes in Jaws that really just stand the test of time. And I know that a lot of these scenes have been parodied in movies and things like that, so I think that kind of impacts the younger generation, or people of my generation even, watching this movie for the first time being like, oh, I've seen that before, this is not as scary anymore. It's like, that's always disheartening to hear, but I remember watching this movie at a fairly young and impressionable age and it leaving an impact. So maybe that's why I have such love for this movie. But there are moments that I do find a little humorous now. There's one moment in particular. It's the opening of Jaws. Now, I absolutely love the opening to Jaws. I think it's one of the greatest film openings ever. I was just watching it recently with my mom and I started giggling. She's like, what are you laughing at? I was like, well, according to the logic of the movie, the woman is going in there with the guy and she's going to go swimming. And, this is her. That's her swimming. And here's the shark. So according to the logic of the movie, Jaws isn't just grabbing her and just eating her, which is probably what would happen in a real shark attack. Instead, he's just kind of grabs her and pulls her down, and then grabs her and pulls her down. He's like fucking with her, and then grabs it. It's like, oh, I'm throwing her all over the place, and then he decides to eat her. And it's like, it's funny watching it in that context, but in terms of filmmaking and the cinematic language of that scene, it's building suspense for the unknown. And that goes into one of the big reasons why Jaws is such a masterpiece in filmmaking, especially in the art of less is more, is the way that Spielberg had to shoot around all of the issues happening revolving around the shark, named after his lawyer, Bruce.
The first mistake with the shark was they built it for fresh water.
What's the difference?
Well, electrolysis. At the press of a hydraulic button and pulling a lever back, supposedly the shark comes shooting out of the water head first, and this has absolutely happened. The shark came up tail first.
But this ended up working in Spielberg's favor, and similar to that of the shower scene in Psycho, which Spielberg has said that movie and that scene in particular was a big inspiration for Jaws, is when you watch the scene in Psycho, you get the impression that you're seeing everything. You're seeing, spoiler alert, Norman Bates dressed up as his mother, stabbing Janet Leigh in the shower, but in reality, you don't see anything. You don't see any of the knife going in. It's the way it's edited, it's all psychological. So he took that inspiration with Jaws and the way it's filmed, in that you don't really see much of the shark in this movie at all up until you get to the end, where you do see a lot of the shark, and it feels like an awesome payoff. This movie also does that horror taboo where it's like killing kids. A fucking kid gets eaten in this movie, and he blows up like a gusher. This is a PG movie, by the way. I realize this was before PG-13 was a thing, but even still, that's like one of the gnarliest horror deaths in a mainstream horror movie. And then, of course, one can't talk about Jaws without talking about the score, John Williams' score. Which, once again, as I was watching the documentary, the National Geographic documentary, he talked about how people laugh when they hear that score now, because it's been so, embedded in pop culture, and it's been used in comedic and satirical type of ways.
What also is funny, they will laugh. So there's been a change of response over the years to something that actually, when we first, in the context for which it was written, has become now a cultural thing. Where it's going to be 50 years from now, I don't know.
Of course, that's not the only score in Jaws. There's other great musical moments in Jaws that are embark on that adventurous tone, especially in the later half of the movie, where our three characters are on the orca and they're, going to hunt down the shark. And there's that adventurous spirit in Jaws that makes it quite rewatchable. This isn't your average horror movie in that it's a complete downer. I mean, there are genuinely some intense and brutal moments in Jaws. Like I said, the kid dying is still one of the most brutal moments in a mainstream horror movie as far as I'm concerned. It also has one of the greatest jump scare scenes ever, when they're going investigating that boat. Richard Dreyfuss is in the water, and then that corpse just kind of, you get the music. Oh man, it's so great. And then of course you get the iconic ending, where after we get Robert Shaw getting eaten alive by the shark, and we believe at this point that Richard Dreyfuss is gone, because after the whole anti-shark thing, we don't know where he is. We know he's missing from the cage, but we assume he's dead, and it's terrifying. Roy Scheider's all by himself, and the shark is breaking through the orca, and he throws a fucking scuba tank in his mouth. And originally the idea was the scuba tank was going to go in the mouth and the shark was going to bite it, and then biting it would cause it to explode. And then Spielberg was like, that's not very realistic. I don't think a shark would be able to bite through a scuba tank. They're like, okay, well, what if he grabs Quint's rifle and he shoots at it and it blows up the shark? Because I think it ends differently in the book. He's like, that would be spectacular, so let's do that. And then you get that smile, you son of a, and it blows up, and the satisfaction you get, because the shark has been terrorizing our characters and the whole community of Amity for so long. It's like you feel that, like, it's that fuck yeah moment. You jump up, and it's just so awesome and exciting. And, it's one of the few horror movies that actually ends on a very upbeat and optimistic tone. And it's just one of the reasons why I think I and so many people revisit this movie, is because, as much as I love a good, dark, super gritty horror movie, it's nice to watch a movie that gives you all of those moments of tension and scares, but also has kind of like a really optimistic, upbeat ending that feels genuinely earned and not tacked on in a cheesy or schmaltzy way. I absolutely adore the ending to this movie. I adore everything about this movie. In terms of like mainstream crowd-pleasing filmmaking, I think Jaws was really the first movie to kind of have that modern feel, not just in terms of the technical aspects of the filmmaking with all the shark attack stuff, which is still brilliant to watch to this day, but in terms of the fast-paced nature of it, the excitement, the adventure, the feel, the atmosphere. I mean, I think Jaws is really kind of the first movie to have that feeling of a modern, exciting movie. That would, of course, be, carried on by other future blockbusters like Star Wars especially, and then other Spielberg movies like Raiders of the Lost Ark. I often go back and forth between what's my favorite Spielberg movie. Is it Jaws? Is it Raiders of the Lost Ark? It's a tie between those two. I can't really pick. I had to talk about Jaws. Happy 50th anniversary to one of the greatest movies of all time. I don't care what Letterboxd says. To me, it's probably in the top 10 greatest movies ever made. So anyway, guys, that's my thoughts on Jaws, but I would love to hear from you guys. What are your thoughts on this iconic movie? Do you like it? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Mention it in the comments below. And as always, thank you guys for watching.